Shraddhavan is speaking. He's speaking about himself and his experience, how he has grown up in the forest. Great nature came to her recovered child. I reigned in a kingdom of a nobler kind than men can build upon dull matter's soil. I met the frankness of the primal earth. I enjoyed the intimacy of infant God. In the great tapestried chambers of her state, free in her boundless palace I have dwelt, indulged by the warm mother of us all, reared with my natural brothers in her house. I lay in the wide, bare embrace of heaven. The sunlight's radiant blessing clasped my brow. The moonbeam's silver ecstasy at night kissed my dim lids to sleep. Earth's morns were mine, lured by faint murmurings with the green-robed hours. I wandered lost in woods, prone to the voice of winds and waters, partner of the sun's joy, a listener to the universal speech. My spirit, satisfied within me, knew, God-like our birthright, luxuried our life, whose close belongings are the earth and skies. Before fate led me into this emerald world, aroused by some foreshadowing touch within, an early prescience in my mind approached the great, dumb, animal consciousness of earth, now grown so close to me, who have left old pomps to live in this grandiose murmur, dim and vast. Already I met her in my spirit's dream, as if to a deeper country of the soul, transposing the vivid imagery of earth through an inner seeing and sense. Awakening came. A visioned spell pursued my boyhood's hours. All things the eye had caught in colored lines were seen anew through the interpreting mind, and in the shape it sought to seize the soul. An early child God took my hand that held, moved, guided by the seeking of his touch. Bright forms and hues which fled across his sight, limned upon page and stone, they spoke to men. high beauty's visitants my intimates were. The neighing pride of rapid life that roams wind-maned through our pastures, on my seeing mood cast shapes of swiftness. Trooping spotted deer against the vesper sky became a song of evening to the silence of my soul. I caught for some eternal eye the sudden kingfisher flashing to a darkling pool, a slow swan silvering the azure lake, a shape of magic whiteness sailed through dream. Leaves trembling with the passion of the wind, pranked butterflies, the conscious flowers of air, and wandering wings in blue infinity lived on the tablets of my inner sight. Mountains and trees stood there like thoughts from God. The brilliant longbills in their vivid dress, the peacock scattering on the breeze his moons, painted my memory like a frescoed wall. I carved my vision out of wood and stone. I caught the echoes of a word supreme and metered the rhythm beats of infinity and listened through music for the eternal voice. I think you can start, Sergei.
Great nature came to her, the colored child. I reign in a kingdom of a nobler kind than man can build upon dull matter's soil. I met the frankness of the primal earth. I enjoyed the intimacy of infant God.
Why do you think he says recovered child? Great nature came to her recovered child. You got an idea? No? Anybody has an idea?
In the palace, he did not have a job.
Yes, I think it's because it's that. He was born and brought up in a palace, and only later on in his life he came to live in the forest. So nature in the forest welcomed him as if he's come back to his true home. No? Now he's come to live this very natural life, very simple life in the forest. So he says, here in the forest, I reigned, I was a ruler. Although he's living as a hermit with his father and his mother, he feels like he's a king, no? Ruling in a kingdom of a nobler kind than men can build upon dull matter's soil. Men build skyscrapers and palaces and all kinds of things, but that forest life, that's a nobler kind. And he says, I met the frankness. Frankness is a quality of simple sincerity, without any pretense, openness. There's a very nice flower to which Mother has given the name frankness. It's a gerbera. I don't know whether you know this flower. It's like a little sun. Now we get cultivated varieties, and they're very brilliant. But in Auroville, we used to have the very simple ones. Frankness. So the primal earth, the earth unspoiled, as it's been since the beginning, primal. These are these original feelings. No? He met the frankness, the openness, totally without any pretense of the primal earth. And I enjoyed the intimacy of infant God. We can again think about this phrase, infant God, no? I suppose it embodies the suggestion that the divine is growing up through evolution. So now at the mental stage, we've already met a God who's half grown in the world. But that very primal earth, the earth as it was in its very beginnings, this is the intimacy, or this conveys or shares the intimacy of the first creation of God in his infant stages here in the manifestation. Patricia?
In the great tapestried chambers of her state, free in her boundless palace I have dwelt, indulged by the warm mother of us all, reared with my natural brothers in her house.
Thank you. So in a human palace, the walls may be covered by rich embroidered tapestries, but there in the forest, these tapestries are of another kind. No? They're natural tapestries of trees, the leaves of trees and flowers and beautiful animals. So he says this is the tapestried chambers of her state, of her pomp and glory, great nature. This is her palace, her boundless palace, this vast forest where he lives. There he's free, and he enjoys the indulgence of the great mother of us all, Mother Earth, the ancient mother, Mother Nature. She has taken great care of him and given him wonderful experiences. And he says he was reared, he was brought up with my natural brothers in her house. Here there's a kind of double meaning. Her natural brothers, these are brothers who are not born to our parents, or they're born to one of our parents out of marriage. So they're natural brothers, perhaps not legal brothers. But here, of course, it also has that meaning of all the animals and birds and plants and everything. These are his brothers in this house of nature. Babel?
My name is a white fair embrace of heaven. Sunlight's radiant blessing clasp my door. The moonbeam's silver ecstasy at night kissed my dim wrist sweet.
You can read to the end of the line.
Earth's moons were mine.
Thank you. So I think here the meaning is clear. Anybody wants to ask anything? Any of these words are unfamiliar? When he says heaven, of course, he means the sky and this blessing touch upon his brow, on his forehead, as the sun falls on it. In India, the moon is always associated with delight. So that cool moonbeams falling on my dim lids. These are the eyelids. So that's how he falls to sleep, with the moonlight falling on his face. And these lovely mornings, the natural mornings, waking up in nature, these were mine. Would you like to read?
Lured by faint murmurings with the green loud hours, I wandered lost in woods, thought the voice, over winds and waters, passion of the sun soul. Or listened to the river's speech. My spirit satisfied with no new, but like our birthright, luxury our life, whose close belongings are the earth and skies.
Thank you. So, lured, attracted, a fisherman who wants to catch fish, he will, on his line, he will put a lure, to attract the fish. So he's attracted by these sounds, faint murmurings in the woods that are dressed in green robed. A robe is a dress. So attracted by those faint murmurings, this way and that way, he says he wandered, lost in woods. Prone usually means flat, but it can also mean sort of being drawn by or leaning towards, something like that. So this luring is happening because of the faint murmurings, the voice of winds and waters. And he feels like a partner, a companion of the joy of the sun, the delight of the sun. He's a listener, he's hearing these sounds, these faint murmurings, the sounds of wind and the streams. He feels as if he's learning, listening to the universal speech. So his spirit within him feels satisfied. It knows, it recognizes that we have a divine birthright. Our birthright is what we've inherited just by our birth, just by being born. So he says, we whose close belongings are the earth and skies. We have a divine inheritance, and our life is full of luxury. We have a richness and a wealth that other people don't have. Our possessions are the whole earth and the skies. Would you like to read? Yes?
Before fate led me into this emerald world, aroused by some foreshadowing touch within, an early prescience in my mind approached the great dumb animal consciousness of earth, now grown so close to me, who have left old homes to live in this grandiose nor dim and vast.
Thank you. So I think you must be coming from Russia. Yeah? So I can tell that you're coming from Russia because the way that you say world, it's written with an O and an R, but we pronounce it as if it's written with an E or a U, world. It rhymes with bird, actually. It's the same sound. This is the most common sound in English, actually, and it's a good idea if you learn it. So he says, before fate led me into this emerald world, this beautiful green world of the forest. So that's when he was living in the palace already. Something woke up in him. Something was aroused, woken up by some foreshadowing touch within. There's as if a touch from his inner being, or in his inner being, that foreshadows, that gives a hint of what is going to come in his future life. It wakes up in him an early prescience. Prescience is knowing something beforehand, before it happens. You see it in advance, you know it in advance. So there's something already in that time when he was living in the palace that made him feel close to the great, dumb animal consciousness of earth. Something in his mind was attracted by, interested, drawn to nature. That consciousness of earth, which now, he says, has grown so close to me, because I left those old pomps, all that regal trappings that you have in a palace, all the gold and the fine food and the silks and all these things. He has left all those things, and he's come to live in this grandiose murmur, dim and vast. The vastness of the forests. There's a kind of dim light beneath the trees. There's always a sound. The forest is never completely silent. And in that murmur, that sound of the forest, there's something grandiose, something on a grand scale. So he already was attracted by all that before he came to live in the forest. Lady at the back, would you like to read?
Already I met her in my spirit's dream, as if to a deeper country of the soul, transposing the vivid imagery of earth through an inner seeing and a sense direct in pain.
Thank you. So this is earth. Already I met her in the dream of my spirit, in his inner being. And I see this, he says, I saw this vivid imagery of earth, the bright colors, the shapes and forms of nature. And he transposes those images. Transposing is something that we do in music, for example. A piece of music has been written for the piano, and we might want to play it on a flute. So we have to transpose it, we have to change it so that it can be expressed by the flute, or it can be transposed. A piece that's written for an orchestra can be transposed so it can be played on the piano. So what he's doing is transposing all these things which he sees in nature, the forms and the colors, into this deeper country of the soul in his inner being. And through that transposing, through that deep assimilation of the sights and forms of nature, through that an inner seeing and an inner sense, not these outer senses, but the inner senses of the subtle being, awakening came. Something wakes up in him. And he's going to explain that further. Mahalingam.
The visions will pursue me boy's powers. All things that I had caught in colored lines were seen anew through the interpreting mind, and in the shape which sought to seize the soul.
Yes. So a spell, some kind of magic enchantment pursued my boyhood's hours, all through the hours of his, when he was a boy, a young boy. It's as if he's seeing visions, he's seeing something magical. Everything that he's seen outside, that the eye had caught in colored lines, it gets seen anew through the interpreting mind. And that interpreting mind is trying to seize the soul of what it has seen. Through the shape, it sought to seize, to catch hold of the soul. What is that soul that makes something strike us as very beautiful, attract our attention? This was happening to him again and again when he was a child. Joel?
And early child God took my hand at heaven, moved, guided by the seeking of his touch, bright forms and hues which fled across his sight, linked upon page and stone, they spoke to men.
So here he's explaining how he felt guided by some spirit who is young, a child God, like him as he is a child. There's a child God who takes his hand. Sometimes children have that. They have the feeling of a secret companion that nobody else can see, no? And this child God not only took his hand, but he also seemed to move and guide these bright forms and hues. It's the child God who sees them, it's the spirit, no? But he makes Shraddhavan see them too. No? The child God is trying to grasp these forms and these colors. And what Shraddhavan then does is that he draws them. He's an artist. All children are artists, of course. But he draws them on page and on stone. And then those shapes and forms and colors, they can communicate something to other human beings. So, but in making those forms, he feels as if he's being guided by some divine friend. No? Would you like to read, sir?
High beauty's visitants, my intimates one, the raging fright of rapid life that roams
wind, man.
Through our pastures on my seeing moon. Cast shades of sickness through each water hill. Against the whisper sky became a song of evening to the silence of my soul.
Thank you. So there are visitors who come, visitors embodying beauty, high beauty's visitants, were my intimates. These were my friends, my close comrades. And these took different forms. One form which he mentions is the horses. All those ancient Indian kings, they had many horses. So there he evokes the horses, the neighing pride, to neigh, that's the sound that a horse makes. And these horses are always running about, and they symbolize life. They are so full of life as they run. So he says, those horses that roam around in our pastures, we have special grassy areas where they can be. They are wind-maned. The mane is the lovely long hair that a horse has on its head. And of course, when they're going fast, then the mane gets caught in the wind. And there's some kind of affinity between the mane of the horse and the wind. So, on his seeing mood, that indrawn mood of Satyavans as he observes them, what he's absorbing is the beauty of these shapes of swiftness as they move quickly. This is the way that an artist looks at things, perceives things, and sees things. And another thing that he remembers seeing is the spotted deer. Also, there would be, of course, a deer park around the palace, and they move in their troops, in their groups, and he has seen them outlined against the evening sky, the vesper sky. Vesper is the Latin name for the evening. So that forms of the deers silhouetted against the evening sky. He says that those shapes and that movement became like a song of evening, an evening raga, to the silence of my soul. Here, Sri Aurobindo is showing us Satyavan as somebody who's exceptionally sensitive to beauty, who has the soul of an artist and a poet and a musician. Kumsun.
I cope with some eternal eye, the sudden kingfisher pressing to a darkling pool, a slow swan silvering the azure lake, a shadow of magic whiteness sails through flame, leaves trembling with the passion of the wind, cranked butterflies, the conscious flowers of air, and the wandering wings in blue infinity. Lived on the towers of my inner sight. Mountains and trees stood there like the souls from God.
This is the poet's way of seeing things. My teacher, Amal Kiran, has written a long essay. He used to give classes on poetry in the ashram school, and about these particular lines he gave several talks, and he's made these into a wonderful article showing how in these few lines, how exactly in these few lines Sri Aurobindo has shown us that Satyavan is a poet, an artist and a poet. So it's not that he sees these things for himself. He has the feeling that there's some eternal eye. When he sees these things, some eternal eye is seeing them through him, I caught for some eternal eye the sudden kingfisher flashing to a darkling pool. So it's a wonderful picture. This is the picture that an artist might paint, no? That there's the forest around, there's the pool, and because of the shade from the trees, the pool is dark, but there's something moving. When it says darkling, there's some movement there, no? And into that picture of shade, of dark pool and the shade of the trees, suddenly comes flashing the kingfisher. And the kingfisher is this bird who dives and gets fish. He always comes very fast. And many kingfishers, the ones that we see here in Auroville, actually, they are a beautiful, vivid blue, and they have their bright red beak, long beak. So this is the picture, the kingfisher suddenly flashing in like a flash of light. And his eye has caught that, and it's something so special and so meaningful to him. He feels as if he has caught it for some eternal eye. And in the same way, the picture of the swan on the lake. It's always a beautiful thing to see a swan, you know, swimming slowly, peacefully, this white bird, and reflected in the lake. So the reflection is silver as the water moves around the body of the slowly moving swan. And here this is an azure lake, an intensely blue water. So that form of the slow swan, he says, is a shape of magic whiteness. It seems to be sailing. Actually, when swans move slowly, you can't see how they're doing it. They're moving their feet under the water, and so they're just drifting along like that. It's another beautiful image. Then this leaves just trembling. They're moved by the wind. There seems to be some quivering of passion there, intense feeling. And then the butterflies. He says the butterflies are pranked. They are decorated. They are brightly colored, even as if they're wearing jewels. He says they are the conscious flowers of air. He sees them as flying flowers.
Like butterfly.
Yes. Yes. No, butterflies are beautiful. That's true. And then in the distance, he sees wings, wandering wings in blue infinity, far away in the sky. That gives such a sense of space, of vastness. So all these wonderful things are living, he says, on the tablets, as if they've been painted onto the tablets of the inner sight. They are there living within him. And then there are these vast, long-lasting things, the mountains and the trees. They stood there in his inner sight as if they are embodying thoughts from God. Long-lasting, significant, powerful, permanent, even thoughts from God. Shiva.
The brilliant long bills in their vivid dress, the peacock scattering on the breeze his nose, painted my memory like a fresco wall.
I carve my vision out of wood and stone. I caught the echoes of a word supreme and meter the rhythm beats of infinity, and listen through music for the eternal voice.
So these brilliant long bills, I don't know the name of these birds, I'm not enough of a bird watcher, but there are these water birds. Maybe they are painted storks, perhaps that's what they are, who have very bright colors. So, and long bills. They are water birds, they catch fish. And the peacock, he scatters on the breeze his moons, he does this special movement, the beautiful moons in his tail. These wonderful sights are painted on Satyavan's memory like a frescoed wall. A fresco is when you paint directly onto the plaster of a wall, bright colors. And again confirming that he really was engaged in these artistic pursuits. He carved his vision out of wood and even out of stone. And he expressed them in poetry. I caught the echoes of a word supreme, some great high word, and metered the rhythm beats of infinity. This is actually the highest form of poetry, when we can rhythm when we can meter the rhythm beats of infinity, then we can express mantra. And when he hears music there in the palace, he's listening for an eternal voice. So the inner being is awake and is receiving all these wonderful things in a very intense way. Luba.
I felt the cover touch. I heard it call. The whole grasped the body of my boy. The hold between my hands, the wood mother's feet.
So he feels some contact, covert, a secret touch. He hears a call, but he's not able to really seize and hold the body of my God. No, it's something subtle, it's something elusive. Of course, he would love to clasp the World Mother's feet, but he's not able to do that. Can't hold on to that. He can't feel them in a concrete way. There's some sense of missing something. Martin.
In men, I met strange portions of the self, that sought for fragments and in fragments lived, each lived in himself and for himself alone, and with the rest drawing only fleeting ties. Each passion over surface joy and grief, nor soul eternal, with secret hope.
So this sounds just like what we were reading in the Life Divine last night, about this strange divided consciousness that we human beings live in, this separated consciousness. So Satyavan, when he meets the people around him, he says he meets strange portions, parts of a self with a capital S, a universal being, one being. And those strange portions, these separated beings, are always looking for, seeking after fragments, small bits, and they live in fragments. Each of them is living in himself, shut off from the whole, and for himself alone. And he has only fleeting ties with other people. We meet here every Thursday, but we have just a fleeting connection. We don't feel that deep inner oneness all the time. Each of us is feeling intensely our own joy and grief here in our surface being, but we are not seeing the eternal of whom we are all part. We don't see the eternal within ourselves. Here, this nor, usually it goes with something else. You say neither this nor that. But in poetry, it can mean and not. So they did not see the eternal in his secret house. For poets, it's very useful to have these short words that can say what we would otherwise have to put in many words. Dhanalakshmi.
I conversed with nature, mused with the gentlest stars. God's watchfires burning in the ignorant night, and saw upon her mighty visage fall a ray prophetic of the eternal sun.
So he converses, he has a conversation with, communicates with nature. And he's kind of meditating, musing with the changeless stars. They are always the same. They are the watchfires, the guardian fires, the fires of the watchmen, the sentinels, the stars, always burning in the night of our ignorance. Those lights are always burning, those truths. And he sees on the mighty visage, the great face of nature, a ray falling, a ray that is prophetic. It's telling of something that will happen in the future. He sees in nature the possibility of a transformation to come. A ray prophetic of the eternal's sun. So we'll stop there for today. So let's go back to page 403, and we can read all this together. I hope that as we read it together now, we will understand it better than we did the first time.
Great nature came to her recovered child. I reigned in a kingdom of a nobler kind than men can build upon dull matter's soil. I met the frankness of the primal earth. I enjoyed the intimacy of infant God. In the great tapestried chambers of her state, free in her boundless palace I have dwelt, indulged by the warm mother of us all, reared with my natural brothers in her house. I lay in the wide bare embrace of heaven. The sunlight's radiant blessing clasped my brow. The moonbeam's silver ecstasy at night kissed my dim lids to sleep. Earth's morns were mine. Lured by faint murmurings, with the green-robed hours, I wandered, lost in woods, prone to the voice of winds and waters, partner of the sun's joy, a listener to the universal speech. My spirit, satisfied within me, knew, godlike our birthright, luxuried our life, whose close belongings are the earth and skies. Before fate led me into this emerald world, aroused by some foreshadowing touch within, an early prescience in my mind approached the great, dumb, animal consciousness of earth, now grown so close to me, who have left old pomps to live in this grandiose murmur, dim and vast. Already I met her in my spirit's dream, as if to a deeper country of the soul, transposing the vivid imagery of earth. Through an inner seeing and sense, awakening came. A vision spell pursued my boyhood's hours. All things the eye had caught in coloured lines were seen anew through the interpreting mind, and in the shape it sought to seize the soul. An early child God took my hand that held, moved, guided by the seeking of his touch. Bright forms and hues which fled across his sight, limned upon page and stone, they spoke to men. High beauty's visitants my intimates were, the neighing pride of rapid life that roams wind-maned through our pastures, on my seeing mood cast shapes of swiftness. Trooping spotted deer against the vesper sky became a song of evening to the silence of my soul. I caught for some eternal eye the sudden kingfisher flashing to a darkling pool, a slow swan silvering the azure lake, a shape of magic whiteness, sailed through dream. Leaves trembling with the passion of the wind, pranked butterflies, the conscious flowers of air, and wandering wings in blue infinity lived on the tablets of my inner sight. Mountains and trees stood there like thoughts from God. The brilliant long bills in their vivid dress, the peacock scattering on the breeze his moons, painted my memory like a frescoed wall. I carved my vision out of wood and stone. I caught the echoes of a word supreme and metered the rhythm beats of infinity and listened through music for the eternal voice. I felt a covered touch, I heard a call, but could not clasp the body of my God, or hold between my hands the world mother's feet. In men I met strange portions of a self that sought for fragments and in fragments lived. Each lived in himself and for himself alone, and with the rest joined only fleeting ties. Each passioned over his surface joy and grief, nor saw the eternal in his secret house. I conversed with nature, mused with the changeless stars, God's watchfires burning in the ignorant night, and saw upon her mighty visage fall a ray prophetic of the eternal sun.